for black public officials. And I certainly like to thank you all for coming out, and if not brazing the weather right now, it's certainly cold. And we was really concerned about the turnout tonight, but we got a good turnout, and I certainly thank you. And we'll be involved in this process for the next day and a half, tonight here in Rolling Fork and tomorrow in Greenville at the Mace Building. And in ways of introduction, I'd like to let you know about the persons that's involved in this whole process. On camera, Mr. Al White, who is taping this for us, and he's been with us for the last couple of workshops and has been really instrumental and helpful in this whole process and making sure that we have a record that people can go back to and see and build on. Also, my partner in crime here, and we've been on the road for God, I don't know how long, and we'll be here for the next year, we know. Brother Mike Sayers, who is responsible for directing and coordinating this whole effort. He's coordinating for field services with Mace. My friend Hollis Watkins, who's hiding in back, who worked officially for a group called Mississippi Association of Cooperative, and have been involved since '61 in the civil rights movement, and will work with us over the two-day period, specifically in organizing and showing how we go about doing this in an organized, dealing with redistricting. Will be with us on tomorrow. And Senator Henry Kirksey will also be with us on tomorrow. So we have all of the stars, you see. And I'm simply going to do what I have to do and let the show go. The Reverend Parker, Thomas Parker, if you would come and lead us in the invocation, certainly would appreciate it. And from that, I'll bring you Michael.
Let us pray. Father God, we come taking advantage of this opportunity, this time which you have made and prepared for us. Father God, we ask that you go with us and stand by us. Father, look over us with the hand of mercy. Guide us in the way that you would have us to go. Father, lead us because we are your children. We know, Father, that you have all power. We ask that you be patient with us. Be concerned about our travel. Father God, we come as humble as we know how, asking all these blessings in our dear darling Son Jesus' name, and for Christ's sakes. Amen.
Amen.
Just put it on here, maybe.
On the top.
We'll get this sooner or later.
Yeah, this is the hard part.
It's downhill from here. Will that stay? Just hook on? Is this hook on? Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Reverend Parker. And I want to thank especially Miss Emma Harris for all the help that she's given us, as Sam indicated, not only for this weekend's workshop, but Emma has been working with us from the beginning in helping to think through and design the strategy, the approach that we're taking in trying to develop a process around redistricting that we think addresses in an appropriate and important way what the whole community is up against during not only this next year, but really it's for years to come in terms of what's at stake. And that's what I want to talk about at the outset in terms of an overview of what we're doing. Let me just take a moment to make a comment about the materials. We've provided you with a handbook which we designed in connection with the beginning of the workshops. And then you will see in the left-hand part in the sleeve, there are two bulletins, what we're calling the Mississippi Delta Redistricting Bulletins, 1 and 2. And that is a way in which we're going to continue to update the information that you've gotten. And you will see both in bulletin number 1 and bulletin number 2, we've provided some data from the Census Bureau, which was not available when we began the process. And we're going to continue to provide that with commentary about how you can use that information to advance the work in your community. So one of the things that we're going to use your registration forms to do is to build our mailing list, so as we prepare these bulletins, we can send them to you directly so that you can make use of that information locally. It'll keep you apprised also of developments that are going on elsewhere that you need to know about. In some cases, that process will take too long and we'll have to get on the telephone. But one of the things that we want you to know is that both MACE in Greenville and the Mississippi Redistricting Coalition, based in Jackson, with which all of us work and many others do, such as Senator Kirksey and Carol Rhodes, Attorney Rhodes, will continue to provide technical assistance and backup and help in terms of planners and attorneys and other kinds of work that you may decide you need in connection with the work that you're doing here locally. Excuse me. So we want you to know that. We want you to feel comfortable in calling upon us and asking us, you know, whatever it is that you feel you need help with. Okay. Why are we concerned about this redistricting issue? What is it about? How does it affect us? If you're interested in public education, if you're interested in how public education affects your children, if you're interested in how public education is going to affect the future of your community, if you're interested in issues of housing, if you're interested in issues of economic development and job creation and problems of unemployment, if you're interested in anything which affects the community, almost certainly in major ways, the issues that you're concerned about are affected by public policy. They're affected by the decisions which are made by your public officials. So if you're talking about public policy, the formation of public policy, you're talking about decisions made by public officials. If you're talking about decisions or votes by public officials, you're talking about people who have either been elected to office or who have been appointed to office by those who have been elected to office. So if you're talking about people who have been elected to office, you're talking about officials who have run from a ward or a district. And if you're talking about someone who has run from a ward or a district, then you're talking about someone whose being in office is affected by, is controlled by the district boundary lines or the ward boundary lines in which that district is located. And if you're talking about district or ward boundary lines, then you're talking about the redistricting process, because it is the redistricting process which is done every 10 years after the federal census is completed, which determines where those boundary lines for wards or districts must be drawn. And when we're talking about redistricting, we're talking about at the congressional level, Mike Espy's seat, for example. We're talking about the state legislature, the senators and representatives in the Mississippi legislature who make decisions affecting your lives. We're talking about the Board of Supervisors at the county level. We're talking about the school boards, whether you're talking about a city or county school board. We're talking about city councils or boards of aldermen, or alderpersons as it should be called today, okay? Every one of those political subdivisions must be redistricted. Now, Attorney Rhodes just told me yesterday that he's analyzed the new county census data, which we've just gotten, at the county level, and has indicated to me that on the one person, one vote level alone, whether the districts are equal in population, that on that basis alone, it is clear that 77 of the 82 counties in Mississippi, on that basis alone, must be redistricted, and that includes every single county in the Delta. So every one of the counties that we're working with, that we're concerned about, will have to be redistricted. Now, there are two tests that you will have to be concerned about when you're talking about redistricting. The first test is under the one person, one vote standard. That standard is that the districts, the wards, for example, your county board of supervisors, there are 5 districts, they have to be roughly equal in population. There's a certain deviation that's permitted. We'll get into that in the court next day and a half. But what you need to keep in mind is they've got to be roughly equal in population. And if they are not, if they fall outside the deviation, then on that basis alone, there must be redistricting. The second standard that you need to be concerned about is under the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the requirement is that the obligation of the County Board of Supervisors, for example, or the state legislature, for example, or the city council or the school board, for example, when they make the decision, and they make the decision, they're the body legally authorized to make that decision, when they make that decision, their duty, their obligation is to create, to draw, to make the maximum number of electable black majority districts that can be made under the circumstances. Not the minimum, the maximum number of districts that can be created. And when we're talking about electable black majority districts, we are not talking about districts which simply, as a matter of numbers, are technically majority black. We're talking about making an analysis of the districts using factors which we will go over with you during the next day and a half, which determine whether that district is a district in which the black community has a fair and reasonable opportunity to elect a representative of its own choice. Okay? Electable black majority district. That's what that means. That means that when a white candidate is running against a black candidate in that district, that the black candidate has a reasonable chance to actually win the election. Because the court decisions are clear. The 1965 Voting Rights Act means that you have to be able to win the elections, not simply register to vote, not simply come out to vote, not simply have the right to have candidates in the election, not simply to have the pleasure of running a political campaign. You have to have districts in which, based on the population distribution, there is a fair and reasonable opportunity for black candidates to win those elections. And that is where we all come in. And we all come in to that process together. And we have the highest likelihood or the best chance of creating electable black majority districts and then running candidates successfully in those campaigns by working together. You know that it's much harder if no one works together and everybody spins off in their own direction. And that's where organization comes in. And so that's part of what we're going to be talking about as well, especially this evening, but we'll also be talking about that again throughout tomorrow and especially tomorrow afternoon. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind about redistricting is that if you don't get involved in this, and you don't deal with this, and you don't treat this as seriously as it requires, know for sure that the white community is not laying back, is not indifferent to what's going on. They are well organized. They are well financed. They take this very seriously. Massive resistance, which began long before the '65 Voting Rights Act was passed, but which certainly came into full view in the resistance, the organized resistance by the state against implementation, enforcement of the '65 Voting Rights Act. Each time we go through this process takes new forms. The way in which that policy is being carried out is somewhat different than before. But be clear and be sure, know that that policy is still there. The state has committed $1.2 million to the State Legislative Reapportionment Committee to support its efforts in reapportioning the 5 congressional seats and the whole state legislature. If you have any doubt about what the attitude is, okay, then think about this. And we go into this a little bit, for example, in bulletin number 1 by way of giving you some facts. The State Legislative Reapportionment Committee, which was appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, Brad Dye, has 24 members. Only 3 of those members are black. That's a 12.5% ratio, although black folks comprise 37% of the state's population. Okay? The Legislative Reapportionment Committee was asked in its public hearings last November and December by representatives from the communities and from the Redistricting Coalition and others, came to those hearings in November and December and said, expand the committee to appoint more black legislators so that the approximate representation on that committee can be about 35%. Okay, we asked them to add 9 members, which would give them 12 out of 36, 12 out of 35, I think it was. They have ignored that. They have refused to deal with it. They won't touch it. We also brought to their attention that there were no black planners, no planners who had experience and who had acted aggressively in the past to represent the needs and interests of the black community, none who were involved in the process at the state level. The state's position is tough. Okay? What would be the expression? You can't touch this, is what they're saying, right? They're not going to do it. They're not going to deal with it. They have hired MARIS, which stands for Mississippi Automated Resource Information Service, which is a coalition of the heads of 21 state agencies, which controls a multi-million-dollar computer operation based, interestingly enough, at Jackson State University, okay, but which is all white. All of the heads are white. All of the staff are white. All of the people involved in this process at Marist are white. And that issue has been addressed not only from outside the committee, but from inside the committee by its representative Ed Blackman raised that, Senator Alice Hardin raised that. Committee has hired Marist and refused to consider anybody else, even though there are a number in this state, a number of black planners who have worked for years in redistricting and have been very effective in court cases, acknowledged in terms of their expertise. No way. And thirdly, the committee was asked, the State Legislative Reapportionment Committee was asked to hire, as part of its legal team, advising it, giving its counsel, representing it in the various disputes that they know are going to arise, to hire one of the attorneys, and there are many in this state, who over the years had represented the needs and interests of the black community, and not just attorneys who had represented the needs and interests of the white community. And up until now, from our point of view, they have consistently and systematically refused to do that. Last summer, they hired the firm, the State Legislative Reapportionment Committee, hired the firm of Crosswaite, Turney, Noble, and Elaine. That's remember Governor Bill Wayne. And that firm has represented the committee from the summer on. That firm is the firm which over the last decade has most consistently represented the state and counties all over the state in resisting attempts to enforce, to implement, to breathe life into the 1965 Voting Rights Act. That's who the State Legislative Reapportionment Committee hired. Now, because we were making such a fuss about there being no black attorneys, remember what we said was not just hire a black attorney, hire a black attorney with credibility in the black community, an attorney who has represented the needs and interests of the black community, right? Because we know there's a difference, right? In response to that, they hired Dunbar Phelps, very large white firm in Jackson. It's actually out of New Orleans with an office in Jackson. Now, Dunbar Phelps promotes as one of its representative cases in Martindale and Hubble, which is the lawyer's directory, call it the lawyer's Bible if you want, in the situation. That's where you look to see who's in a firm, what they're about, what kind of cases they handle. What they list as one of their representative cases is the representation of employers, the representation of employers in the defense against employment discrimination claims, right? But it's clever, because what Dunbar Phelps did this fall was to hire Reuben Anderson, the recently retired Supreme Court Justice, who is black. And they say, see, we've got a black attorney. And with all due respect to Mr. Anderson, he has no history in redistricting efforts. He has no background in it. He has not represented the black community in these kinds of things. And in any event, he is only part of a larger firm which is going to set policy for what the attorney does and where the interests of that firm lie in this situation. So I paint that picture for you because A, it's factual, B, it gives you an idea of what the state's commitment is. They are ready to fight, they are determined, and the one thing that we have going for us that they can't have is that we have the ability to pull together, to share our information, to develop our understanding of what needs to be done, how it can be done, how we can be effective, and we can make that fight from the community level. And we can bring into this process, as we need it, planners and attorneys who historically have represented the needs and interests of the black community to make the kind of fight that's been made over the years to win these fights. But it's going to require understanding what the new tricks and devices are, how they have tried to do the community in the past, and that's part of what we're going to be going over in the next day and a half. But it's not enough. It is not enough just to understand those things. We also have to share the process of building the basis organizationally to pool our efforts, to be effective, and to become not only strong, but stronger, and to enable that to grow. And that's what we're going to be talking about next. And so I'm going to introduce to you Brother Hollis Watkins, who has been in what you might call movement work since the earliest days of the 1960s. Hollis was one of the first two students coming out of the Macomb area to become involved in voter registration work down in that area. And he was involved, has been involved ever since in that kind of organizational and political work. For example, in 1984, he was campaign chairman in Mississippi for Jesse Jackson. And in 1984, he was field coordinator, 1988, excuse me, field coordinator for the Jesse Jackson campaign. He's worked for years in farmer organization through the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives, and the list of things goes on, and we don't have time just to list all of those things, it would take half an evening. But I want to bring Hollis on now to make his presentation with you on problems of organizing. Let me just say, as he's pinning himself together here, that one of the objectives is for us to all get involved in this. And at any point you have a question, or you have something you want to say, or you want to, reshape an issue that we're discussing, please feel free to jump in. I mean to say that at the beginning when I get started, but I always forget. And so I try to remember at least at the end. Please don't feel that this is only a, putting information out there, because we learn a great deal in this process from your responses, and we have each week. And in part, the materials, for example, that we've developed in the bulletin have been in response to things that people have asked us about. So we learn from your questions as well. Thank you, Hollis.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I'll say good evening, everybody. And it's good to be here to talk with you a little bit about building organizations, how we do that, some of the problems that we run into in doing that. Mike talked about the situation that we are facing, a little bit about some of the things that have gone on, and it lets us know that in order for us to overcome that which we're facing, we're going to definitely have to come together and do some organizing. And one of the reasons that they've been able to get away with improper districts for so long is the fact that we were not organized. We did not have our homework done, and they just pulled the wool over our eyes and got away with it. One thing that I think is very important that we understand is the difference between organizing and mobilizing. And I say that for the most part, the work that we have done have gone into mobilizing rather than organizing. Because generally when we are mobilizing, we get people together around a specific issue, a specific event, situation, circumstance, and once that event is over, or once that issue is settled, then everybody go back home, go their separate ways, and wait and listen. Some don't even wait and listen to be called and told about another issue. Which means that when something else comes up, we have to go through that same process again that we've just gone through in developing and getting people to come to a point. But if we organize, then we will have a number of people, a number of groups that's already together, that's working together, and looking for, or even creative deciding on things that need to be dealt with. And in essence, what I'm saying is that generally organizations, especially strong ones, they don't be reactionary. They determine the course of action, and people act, or react rather, to what they do rather than they reacting to what others are doing. And that's where we have to go, because as long as we are reactionary and react based on what somebody else has done, then we're not calling the shots. And that's the situation we've been in. Other people call the shots and we react to it, one way or the other. One of the things that's very important in organizing is communication. And not just communication, but good communication. We have to be able to communicate with one another if we are going to do some serious organizing. The other thing that's very important if we're going to be organizing or have an organization is to make sure that we have people that's involved in that organization. And how do we get those people? We have to go through the process of communication to reach them. And why do we want to organize anyway? So that we won't have to do the work all by ourselves, right? It makes the burden just a little bit easier for us if we don't have to carry it all by ourselves. When Sam and Mike was taking the boxes out of the car, they did a little mobilizing right there on the spot and got somebody to help with the boxes so it wouldn't be such a burden on them. So we do that so that we don't have to carry such a big load, so that we can meet other people. We get to know them, they get to know us. We gain friends that way. And as we become organized, then we get to the point where that we can at least have some influence on those who are making decisions. And we also organize where that we not only have influence on those that are making decisions, but that we get to the point where we make some decisions ourselves. So we have to communicate and get people involved in that whole process. Now, when we look at people in the community as we go about trying to organize and get people involved, then we have to be able to figure out the best way to get people involved. And one of the things that we constantly do is that we look for leaders, right? We want to get the leaders involved. You know, all of us are used to looking for the leaders. For various reasons. Now, but for the most part, we never really consider that term in depth. Now, what is a leader? Or who is a leader? Anybody that's got somebody that'll follow them, right? If you got somebody that'll follow you, then you're a leader. And I dare say that most all of us are leaders, and most all of us are followers. So most of us can find at least one person that will follow us. So we all are leaders. And part of the problem in some cases is that we be looking way over there for that which we have within us or right here within our midst. We be looking for the leader and you're looking at him. You can't see him for looking for him. You can't see her for looking for her. And those are some of the things that we have to begin to understand, and that there are also different degrees of leadership, of various kinds of leadership. And generally, we want to go after the kind of leadership that will further advance the process in the best way and in the shortest amount of time. Generally, that's what we look at. So what we do is that we see a community that's got some people in it. Okay? People in this community are going to be community A. Okay? A lot of leaders in community A because they're involved in that community. And People listen to them. They got certain kinds of communication going on between them. And they get things done. You can look at it as a community, or you can look at it as an organization. Now, we can say this is Rolling Fork community, or we can say it's the Anguilla community, or we can say it's the Voters League organization, or it's the NAACP organization. So if we say it's the Rolling Fork community, then right down the road there is the Anguilla community. Okay? These are the B people. Don't mean that they all bad and all that, but we just going to call them the B people because they are brave and they are bold. All right? And maybe some of them are big. So now, when we look at them, we see that they're all over their community. Just like people in the A community was all over their community. So we understand that in addition to these two organizations, the Voters League, the NAACP, there might be the Civic League, there might be the Motorcycle Riding Club, there might be whatever. Or there's the other town. However we want to look at it. You can look at it as an organization, you can look at it as a community, as a town, a city, or what have you. And then you see that there is another one that exists that we're going to call E. And the E people are all over theirs. They cover their whole community. Not because they are evil or not because they are big eaters, you know, but because this is the name we're given to them. They're eager. And they're eager to go and do the work that has to be done. So what we have here is actually three different groups of people. We got certain groups of people here and here and here. All they deal with is people within their community. Each one of them, see? This group of A folks, they don't associate with nobody but other than in their community. These B folks here, these E folks the same way. Now, when we look right here, we see that the people that's in this area right here, they have a relationship with community A and community B. And these people down here have the relationship with community E and community B. These here got a relationship with community A and community E. So there's some communication and some crossover there. You know how it is. Even though I'm a member of the Voters League, I'm a member of the NAACP as well. You know, even though I belong to the organization that's here in Rolling Fork, I'm still a member of the one that's up in Anguilla. Well, that's what we're talking about here. And then you got another area where the people in here got relationships in all the different communities. See? In A, B, and C. The people that's in this area here, they have that relationship with all three communities. So these are the people here that we want to try to look at dealing with first, because the word, the whatever, can spread much faster. They have a relationship. They've already dealt with people in all of in those various organizations. So we will go after them first, then these second, and then these third. Never know. The work will proceed much rapid. So that's how we want to look at the people in the various organizations, the people in the various communities, when we decide on who we want to go after first. Because we can't go after everybody all at the same time. We have to develop a plan and systematically move out on the plan and begin to work it. So this is the best way that we need to look at doing that. Now, when we look at a community, as we've talked about a little bit, we know that there are many different components to all communities, right? Many different organizations. As we say, we got the Voters League here. We got the Improvement League here. We got the NAACP, here. We got the Riding Club, here. You got the group over here that's fighting the dope, whatever they may be called. You got another group over here that's trying to get the elected officials together. You got a group over here that's fighting the problems in the schools. And so on. We can go on and on and on. And each one of these various groups have different interests. And they have not taken the time to see how they all interrelate with each other. And that's part of the problem that we're faced with. And that's part of what we have to overcome. Now, all of us have done organizing before, but one of the problems that we face when we deal with organizing is that we don't systematically plan the process and don't thoroughly understand the steps that we need to go through in organizing. There are several basic steps that we need to make sure that we go through when we're organizing. The first step is to investigate. This is where we do all of our research, get all of the facts together. We're investigating everything. There's a group over in Holmes County that started out, and they said we should have 3 black board of supervisors, just like we got. So we deserve that. And they start investigating a little bit, and then somebody says, hey, so as a matter of fact, so based on the 1990 census, we should have 4. And they kept investigating, and they kept investigating, and they said, hey, when we check what the law says, said we should have 5. See? They hadn't done the investigating. But when they did the thorough investigating, then they said, no, we should have 5 black supervisors in Holmes County, based on what Mike was saying earlier about the maximum electable black districts. There was a group of people here in the Delta that was getting ready for an election at one time. And they thought they had to stand out and look at the white folks do this and do that, and hope and pray and wish they would do things right. And they did a little investigating, and they found out that they had a right to be right there to watch them folks when they made a mistake. They found out that they had a right to let the folks know that they knew that they were making a mistake, and that they had a right to tell them that you're making a mistake, and if they didn't tighten it up and correct it, that they would do all these kinds of things. And lo and behold, when they got through investigating that thing, they realized that they knew more about the whole election process than the folks that were supposed to be running the thing, and they ran the election, and before the thing was over, the white folks was asking them, well, can we do this or can we do that? That's because they investigated, and they did the investigating thorough. And that's what we have to do. We have to do some thorough investigating to make sure that we understand all that there is to know about it and have all of the facts together. Now, as I said, we wanted to organize so we could gain friends and get somebody else to help us in the whole work process. And usually organizing starts with one individual having an ideal or thought and carries it to someone else through the communication process. So now after we have investigated and found out all of the facts, it won't do us much good if we just sit on it, will it? So that's why the second step is very important, okay? The second step after we investigate is for us to educate. We educate the rest of the folks. This is what we found. Yes, we don't deserve 3 seats. We deserve 5 based on what the law said and based on the number of people that we got. You know, they educate. And communication has to take place all through that whole process. That's what these people here are going to be doing. They're going to be educating, informing the rest of the people in all of the rest of the organizations, all of the rest of the communities that they associate, that they work in. You know, I'm a school teacher, so I'm a part of the educational community, but I'm also a member of the Voters League, and just so happens to be a member of the NAACP at the same time. So I got this information, so when I go back to the NAACP meeting, I'm going to let the rest of the folks know what's happening. I'm going to let the rest of them in those other communities. That's how we do that. We're in the process of educating ourselves through investigating and educating the rest of the people based on what we have come up on in the investigation process. Now, the next major step after we educate the people, we have to negotiate. We got to negotiate the deal, see? And that's what we were attempting to do in the redistricting public hearing when they had them across. We were attempting to negotiate some of the wrong things that took place because we had done our investigating. We had people from all different parts of the state that came to those hearings because we had educated them as we educated ourselves. We began to negotiate. Now, negotiation has to take place at more than one level. And the first level of negotiation is here. Because, see, we done all put the information out there. The educating also has to go on right there, right? So you tell them, says, well, say, the folks that's trying to get the elected officials in office, black elected officials in office, say if we got the right folks in office, they would hire the right police. And if we had the right sheriff, we wouldn't have to worry about the dope folks. So they'd run them out. So you wouldn't have to be bothered with all that kind of problem. So if you come in here and work with us and getting the right folks elected in these positions, you know, your problem be solved. Okay? We educating. We're doing that second step because we done found the research. We've investigated. And once we do that, in the process of educating, we also negotiating, see? Because when you told them that, the end result was saying, hey, let's work together on this thing. Because we all a part of this same community. Said the NAACP said you about advancement, you know, for us black folks. Then if we get the right folks in office, that's an advancement. If we can keep the dope pushers out, then that's advancing our community, right? So y'all that's over here with the NAACP, you know, let us get together. So little by little, through the educational process combined with negotiation, you're bringing all of the different factions in this community together. But you can't just go to one and assume that all of the others are going to fall in line, because they might not know. They might not have the facts. They may not have done the investigating. So you have to make sure that based on your investigation, that you do a thorough job in educating, and that way your negotiation process at this level will be a lot easier, because once you get the whole community together, once you get the whole county together doing this process, then you go to the next level where you are going to those that are opposing you. See, we found, like the folks in Holmes County have already gone to their board of supervisors and told them, say, based on the statistics, we see that these are the things that could be done. See, because Holmes County had put the word out that they wasn't going to redistrict, that it was already taken care of. So they told them, says, based on our investigation, if you got any district that have a certain percentage of deviation, redistricting has to take place. So they knew that all the time, but they didn't know the people knew it. So when the people told them that, they pulled out a little sheet of paper and said, well, I guess we might as well pass this out. And they passed out a form that showed all of the deviations in the various districts. So this was a part of the negotiation. See, we want y'all to redistrict because the law says that you should based on this. Then they also told them, says, based on our investigation, we found that y'all have the right to hire attorneys, and you have a right to hire some folks to draw up some plans. So we want to recommend that y'all hire attorney, and they named some black attorneys, and we recommend that you hire Senator Kirksey to draw the districts, because, you know, he can draw them. You know, this was the negotiation that threw them all off. They said, well, we're going to think about that, and we'll make a decision by such and such a date. So, see, they had already started their negotiation process. So that was after most of the groups in here had come together, and they all went at one unified voice to negotiate with the Board of Supervisors. And that's how you have to do that. The Board of Supervisors begin to to listen at them. So now, once you complete your whole negotiation stage, you move to the next level if it becomes necessary. If you win out in the negotiation, then you got what you was looking for. But if you don't win in the negotiation process, in which most of us won't win, because they'll tell you, as Mike said, you can't touch that. That's already sealed. See, because like even today, many of the folks, especially in the Delta area, have already contracted and hired the folks to do the redistricting. We don't even know about it. So we're a little bit behind on that. But anyway, after the negotiation stage, the next stage is to demonstrate. And we can demonstrate in different forms. You know, we can call on 10 members from each one of these different groups or organizations or communities. So come on, let's say, meet me up at the meeting that the Board of Supervisors is having or that the Redistricting Committee is having. You can demonstrate by having a number of people there to voice their opinion all on one accord. Or you can go to what, in most cases, we ultimately have to go to, which is a part of the demonstration, which is filing a lawsuit. And that's the form of demonstration. The kind of demonstration we do is left up to us. But that is the next stage. We investigate, we educate, then we negotiate, and then we demonstrate. And like I say, when all that other stuff fails, yeah, we got our lawyers ready to file a suit against them because we know what we are entitled to, we know what we should have, but they're not coming up with it. But before all of that happens, we have to understand those steps and go through them, and especially those steps within our community. And once we see it and understand it and have it laid out there, it becomes easy, you know, for us to do because we see it. Many times when we look at things without really putting it down systematically, it looks as if we've got the world of everything that's against us and we can't figure out how to move on anything. But if we develop a plan and go through it systematically, we see that it's much easier because we're in focus. And we can use these same steps when we're organizing anything, be it around the redistricting, be it around whatever. You go through that same process and those same steps. And that's what we want us to do, is to make sure that we bring as many of the different elements of the community involved into this whole process so we can go in one voice. Because if it gets to the point where that we have to file a lawsuit, Justice Department is going to want to know what is the black community saying and whether the community is speaking in one voice is going to have major impact. See, if one is saying eggs and the other one is saying chickens and the other one is saying birds and the other one is saying ducks and the other one is saying geese, you say, okay, so I see where y'all coming from. Some would just leave it like it is. I don't blame the folks. I wouldn't puzzle my brains or go through all of that trying to figure out which. And that's why we have to do the communicating that's necessary and the educating and negotiating with one another that brings us together. And one of the most important things to do to set that premise that makes that easier to do is that we deal with people on the concept, the theory, or the ideal. And that is getting as many electable districts that we can get, the maximum electable districts for black folks. And you know, are you opposed to having the maximum electable districts for black? You know, who Who would among us that would say, I oppose from getting as many black, districts, as we can get. We shouldn't get as many as we, most folks will not take that position. So that's the good and starting point around the whole district in question. Redistricting question is that we put the concept, the theory out there, and then we tell them. Say, it's the law. The law says that this is what we should have. You want to be a law breaker? You want to be a law-abiding citizen? Why do you want to break the law? When it comes to benefiting us. So now, I don't think we should obey the law. I think instead of giving y'all, instead of us getting 3, we ought to settle for 2. It don't make sense. And that's why it's important that we understand what the facts are and to put it out there plain and simple. And I dare say that if we put it out there that way and begin to educate these people about what the law is, about what the possibilities are, about what the percentage is, I believe that they will say, okay, I'm with you, and we're going to join together on this one and move forward. I'm going to stop right there and see if there are any questions that any of you may have.
Can a county get by without redistricting? If nobody says anything, can they just go on?
If nobody says anything, they can go on, but chances are that they would be breaking the law. See, if any of those districts have deviated in terms of population up to what they're saying, the deviation is 10% this time.
5% in the size, yeah.
Right. If there is a 10% deviation in that district, then they have to they have to redraw the lines.
Mr. Watkins is Detroit has some black elected officials, but the folks that's putting up all the money look like they're leaving Detroit. They're going out. Some of the place out there got more office holders than Detroit has. So sometimes you might win and you might control the government, and then the folks that got the money, they leave.
And then the tax base.
Yeah, the tax base is up. That's what I think about.
That seems to be happening in Hollandale.
Huh?
That seems to be happening in Hollandale.
Jackson also.
Well, it's happening generally all over. Anytime that we as black people begin to take some of our rightful places, white folks who have had the money begin to figure out how to withdraw and or withhold the money. So what we have to do is to be creative enough to develop plans, programs, and strategies by which we ourselves can reverse that trend and bring into being enough economics that will sustain initially that jurisdiction and ultimately get to the point where that it actually began to grow. And believe it or not, we as black folks are some of the most creative folks it is on the planet Earth, because just by virtue of the fact that we have managed and figured out how to be able to survive, on all this stuff that we've been going through, that within itself shows that we are very, very creative. Sometimes I think about my father, who didn't go to school at all, and my mother who finished the 6th grade, and how they dealt with everything for 12 kids, way, way back, and I'm sure all of us can look at examples way back and examples right today. So we are very creative. It's just that we have to come together in here in that process. And once we do that, I think we can move on.
I think a point that they're raising is interesting because if you remember a few years ago, the same thing began to happen in the city of Chicago, right at the time when Harold Washington was elected. What happened is you had, right before that point, you had a number of white, a large mass of white moved into suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had, as soon as they moved out in the suburb, and apparently the tax base was gone and the business had left, right on the west side, south side, and you see a lot of that now, is that they came back and occupied a lot of the buildings. Mm-hmm. Supposedly that people wouldn't even live in, you couldn't build and all this kind of thing, couldn't rehabilitate and all of that, and they turned them into condos. And all of a sudden, the market, the prices of just staying there just zoomed up.
Right.
So I think it's important for us to understand that a lot of the problem that we're having right now, this whole thing you point to education, that this process leads to advancement. Mm-hmm. And if you follow that all the way through, and white people leave because there's both a political strategy to maintain control, and then they blame the black community for all of the problem that they have because the tax rate can go if black folks gain the power and not really understand totally what's happening there. There's a whole strategy for them to maintain the power because they definitely going to come back to Detroit. Nobody's going to leave that real estate. And what is happening is even black people are buying into the fact that we do not have the wherewithal to run government, therefore making things better for ourselves and everybody else. And that's a new line of thought because we have never thought that way. Yeah. We have never ever thought that way.
And see, the other thing too is that there is a very simple method to deal with it. Mexico City is one of the largest cities in the world in terms of area. How did they get to be there? They started out here. The rich folks moved out there. They said, zoop. The rich folks moved out there. They said, zoop. The rich folk moved out there. They said, zoop. Rich folk moved way out there, all of them. And they said, so you ain't going nowhere.
Is that what's happening in Greenville?
So what I'm saying is that is a way to do it, and it could very well be, because see, here again is, it's not, if you're running things, who sets the boundary lines? If you're running city government, who determines where the city boundary lines start and stop? So you got the rich folks out there, they done dug their own wells and what have you. They got their own water system, but you get them. So we got you, say, and if you want to get on the city line, it's going to take about 5 years for us to develop it and run it there. I said, but we're going to be working on it. And you do. I'm saying that's one way that you can deal with it. Other ways you can try to figure out some other alternatives. But yeah, Mike.
The questions that you've raised are real important, and see if I can characterize this correctly. White folks are going to be very disciplined and very systematic and very brutal in their tactics in trying to convince black folk that to fight to win certain rights and then to exercise those rights will be dangerous to the interests of black folks. And one of the forms of threat that they are beginning to become more expressive about, more open about, is to say that we will withdraw our economic power, that we control all forms of employment. You look around and there aren't a lot of black businesses employing a lot of people. And so if you have any hope, if you have any desire to see economic development and advancement for the black community, don't do this. Now, two things. One is that this is an old line. This is not new. Senator Eastland, you all remember Senator Eastland, right? No great friend, right?
That's right.
An architect of resistance, an architect of segregation. In 1948, said to the Mississippi legislature in an address to a joint session, but really speaking out to black people all over the state of Mississippi, he said, you can have better jobs, you can have better housing, you can have better education, but you have to do one thing in this deal. Don't vote. Do not participate in the political process. I'm not making that up. He actually said that, and he meant it. But the other thing to remember is that that promise is nonsense that they make, that they have no intention of providing serious economic development or serious economic advancement any further than beyond the point that you fight for it, that you demand it, and that you make them give it up, right? Because that's the history. And we can show how in every facet of the American political situation or economic situation, essentially, white folks have worked together to make the planters in the Delta rich and to keep black people poor. And I'm just reading an article now that was published in December of 1990 in the Journal of American History, which shows how the federal farm program and the federal welfare program, which were passed in Congress as a matter of national legislation, but which were administered locally here in the Delta, were used to accomplish that. It's extraordinary how rich the white planters who were denouncing all the while federal intervention in Mississippi. We don't want this. We don't need federal involvement, right? They're changing our way. They were taking all that federal money.
Mike, the ASCS farm program in Sharkey County paid over $9 million to white farmers. And I bet you black farmers don't get 30,000.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, the welfare program is just over $3 million. And the people talking about the folks on welfare, well, see, and they driving these stretch cab pickups and everything. And getting these oscillation off the and I look at going in Greenville there on that country club estate. I just wonder how many of those houses are built with federal subsidized money in one way or other. It's not a federal directly subsidized, but I imagine on down the line it's subsidized somewhere. And you talking about the farm program. See, I'm a victory looking. They about to start me to death on that right now because all these large planters they got all the land. They traditionally own that land. And black folk has only had 40 acres or 50 acres. And then when somebody died, well, and a man that want to expand, he might get that 40 acres. And then he goes down the road 5 miles. I think I go 6 miles down the road, 30 miles down the road, and get. I'm saying when I leave my shop, I goes a total of 30 miles to get 6 farms that equals 125 acres, and they can't give me any kind of consideration at all. No, everything else goes up to a certain size, different rates. But look, it's from you are based on the same as Tommy Brew. He had 4,000 acres of best land in the Delta anyway, and you just gonna fit in there with Tommy Brew. But can't you make some exceptions? No, we can't make no exceptions at all. I wrote this bad copy about yesterday.
You know, when and just in that farm industry thing to show you one of the biggest tricks that they have just pulled over on folks. You know, a few months back, everybody was all upset and working to make sure the 1990 Minority Farm Bill passed. We worked on it, and they pretend that they wasn't going to give it to us, and we got it passed. And you know what they said? So now we got the bill passed talking about what should be. We ain't got no money to fund it.
But they got billions in the
But-
program itself, in the bill itself.
And most folk that's out there don't even know that. They constantly figure out how to give the appearance of doing something, but actually they make sure that they hold it back.
So why?
Any-
I get the opinion that there's so many crimes are committed, so many things are happening among the young blacks and then the adults at all, because the system is so corrupt until people get tired of fighting the system. So they go out on their own and do what they can to survive. It's just like human nature. You take a dog out there that he's starving, he goes from house to house wherever he can find food. And what you're saying went on back in the 60s. Remember, Mr. Fouché was still here, he could tell you we boycotted in Yes City, we did a lot of things. They only get what you demand. And if you don't have leverage, you don't get anything.
Right.
And the bottom line is basis a dollar bill. And like you said, they said, well, you got a job, if you don't keep your nose clean, you're going to be out of job. So if you're willing to serve the consequence, then that's the only way you're going to be able to survive. The system is corrupt. Like you say, the farmers, sometimes they split, they say we have to get several thousand acres, they split up, mama gets so much, dad gets so much, and everybody gets this federal subsidy coming through. And then holler about black people's on welfare. And to me, the farmers, the bigger welfare recipient.
That's right. And six go to
See, part of the reason that they get away with a lot of that is that we have not done thorough investigation and have not educated after doing that. Because, see, if I know what I'm doing, it don't matter what Sam say that I'm doing. I know that I'm not doing that, see. And like the whole thing about the welfare, system and blacks doing this and how blacks are, a lot of blacks have bought into that because they don't have the facts. Proper investigation have not taken place, and proper education in terms of what is happening with these systems and how people are doing have not taken place. And as a result of that, they pull the wool over our eyes. See, and also we have not investigated to the extent where that we have come up with alternative plans and programs, for the farmers right on down the line. When we talk about farmers, for example, I was explaining to some folks where that, and I think I'm still right, whereas that if you make 30 bushels of soybeans per acre, that's considered a halfway decent yield. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you get $7 a bushel per acre, $7 a bushel, that's considered a halfway decent price, right? So what that equals to is $210 an acre. Now, that's gross. And we ain't talking about what it costs to produce it and what it costs to harvest it. That's the gross. Now, over on the other hand, we know that there are people that are producing okra, for example, they're producing okra, and some of them are making 300 bushels, some 350, and we know some that have made 400 bushels per acre. Now, for the last 3 years, okra have been selling for $15 to $18 wholesale per bushel. Now this man that made his 300 bushels per acre done grossed $4,500 off of that acre. Now let's see how many acres, Mike, will we need to plant a soybean to get that?
20 acres.
25 acres.
25 acres.
Okay, now the other thing is that we know it don't take much in the line of production for the okra. Okay, now the harvesting. All right, let's say we were generous, and we paid folks $4 a bushel to harvest it. Because if you're a good picker, you can pick 2 bushels an hour. Because I've done it. Now, if I'm paying $4 a bushel and you pick 2 bushels an hour, you're making $4 an hour. I mean $8 an hour picking okra. All right. So we paid $4 a bushel. That left us $11. All right. Now, 11 times 300, we still got. Is that right? We still got $3,300 after we done paid somebody a good price to pick it. So maybe it costs $300 for the production cost. So, well, maybe it cost $800. So that still left us $2,500 net off of that acre. See, but a lot of us haven't done proper investigation and haven't.
Well, you have a program here in Sharkey County that they was had a okra buying place over here in midnight, and yeah, they had the station was over there at midnight. But after they tried about 2 or 3 years, and they just quit raising it.
You said cucumber too.
Huh?
Cucumber.
Yeah, okra and cucumber. But see, one thing about it, that stuff has to be picked. Okra has to be picked every other day.
Right.
Rain or shine.
Right.
But see, look, I don't feel like it today. I ain't feeling on the day. And then
But see, so, but what I'm saying is that that's just an example of how investigation and education can be transferred, how a lot of people never look at what they're doing, what they, because they haven't systematically, figured it out. They don't have all of the necessary information. That's just another example of how you can use that whole process.
I just want to get back to this model here because I think it's really important that people focus on that, and because I think it's clearly identify what our community looks like. And one of the clearest example I can think of is a church in rural areas where we moved to town or moved to another community, but traditionally as I guess as a habit, we seldom cut ties with church, and a lot of people would live in Greenville, for example, and still probably come back to Anguilla for worship service. And a lot of times I worked in campaign where my marching orders have always been to go straight to the pastor. And we'll go straight there, and a lot of time that is one of the, as a tactic, the worst mistake a lot of us make, because what we should be focusing on is that member who may live in Greenville, or who may live in Anguilla or where else, or around here. And you can go right to them, and you got a automatic hookup with the broader community where they go back and live every day.
Well, see what happens, Sam, in that process is we forget about step 1 in the organizing process. We don't do the investigation that's necessary, and because of us not doing that, we go based on what somebody have said, based on an ideal or a thought. That reminds me of when we we were in Greenwood, Mississippi during the early 60s. And there was a church that we really needed to have meetings in. And the pastor would not open the doors for us. The deacons would not open the doors for us to go in that church. And lo and behold, one day we were down on McLaurin Street, you know, one of the worst hangout streets, you know, in the black community in Greenwood. And we went up on this lady's porch. She was sitting there on the in the little old shotgun house. We went up on her porch and we told her what we were doing, working on voter registration and all that. And we got to talking with her, and we told her about how we were trying to find places to have meetings. And she said, well, what about my church? So y'all could have meetings in my church. And we said, we can? Well, what church is your church? And she told us, and we said, well, we want to get in there, which was the church that we had been trying to get into. But the pastor and the deacons had said no. She says, when you want to have the next meeting, you know, or the meeting there. And we told her, she said, well, okay, said then you can either come by here and get the key, or I'll have somebody to give it to you. That was the leader of the church. The doors open, you know, and we stumbled up on her. You know, we had not done thorough investigation in that process. We were banging our heads up against the wall, you know, and that's why I'm saying, you know, we have to do the good investigation so that we'll know all of the facts. Because when you don't have all of the facts, then a lot of things could go wrong.
Maybe this would be a good point to take a 5-minute break, give everybody a chance to stretch and get some coffee and so on, and then we'll go on to the last part of the program, which I always enjoy the most. Is that okay with everybody? Why don't we just reassemble in about 5 minutes? Do we have everyone's registration forms? Anybody not giving us a registration form?
Is that good? Sam, if you could assist us in getting people back up. Sam, if you and Emma could assist us in getting people back up. I guess we're gonna get started. Sam have gotten most everybody back up. Thanks a lot, Sam. Good job, my man. We're gonna start this session here off by going through part of the process that we all need to go through and looking at what we have and how we're going to be doing our organizing within our various communities. You know, we talked about different steps of organizing and that kind of thing. We've talked about problems that are confronting us out there with the whole redistricting process and the importance of doing it. And we know that from time to time, we don't clearly see where we are, what we have, and what we are up against. But we do know that the redistricting process don't take place until every 10 years. And that's why we need to make sure we get a good one this time so we won't be stuck with something we don't need or want for the next 10 years or that we have to fight over. So as we go about trying to organize in our communities, I think one of the most important things for us to do is to be able to make an assessment of our strengths and our weaknesses. Or we could say we make an assessment of the things that we have going for us and the things that we have going against us. And in doing this, we do an outline where that you put them, where you can see them very clearly. There's no doubt about it. And in doing things this way, you know precisely what you got. You know precisely what you're going up against. And then you begin to figure out what you need to do to have all of these things that's against you, all of the weakness, to change and become for you. So what we would like for us to do right now is to start making a list of these things. You can start at either side that you want to. So we'd like for you to start naming these things so we can do an assessment of where we are and what we have for us, what we have against us, what some of our strengths are and what some of our weaknesses are, so we can move from that point. So who wanna put the first item up on the board?
Well, like for us, we got a greater population.
Okay.
Against us, we have full participation in good rights.
Okay.
For against us, I would say that we have a lack of understanding or knowledge.
Also against us, lack of resources.
Okay.
Lack of interest.
Lack of interest against us. Okay. What else we have out there in our community?
A lack of education. Like you said in the first, we need to educate.
Lack of education. You about to... What else we have? We're looking at our community now. We're looking at our county.
That would be financial. Yeah, but that would be the same as resources.
Okay. Okay, we're looking at our county now. What else do we have out there? You?
So go ahead.
Leaders within the communities, that's a strength.
Strength? Leaders in the community?
We have some.
You remember what you just said about leaders? We got leaders all around us in this room, and it says we got so many leaders just can't see without.
We have,
But then we have many leaders.
why don't I put the next against us then? We can put down, since we got so many leaders, why don't I put us against us, like a unity? We got all the leaders, they're not together.
That's it.
You know, put in parentheses, turf protection, turf division.
Yeah, control.
As related to what she's...
What else?
I would say churches would be for us.
Churches for us.
About industry, we don't have enough industry,
Like a job.
like a job, instead.
Lack of jobs, lack of industry,
Like the youth participation.
lack of youth participation. Okay.
I guess I just might well throw my monkey wrench in too. Okay. Against us, race and class.
Race and class.
Apathy or what? Apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah, right.
Okay. You were about to say something a few minutes ago, Mike.
Well, what we're talking about making an assessment, looking at the situation, investigating what we have for us and what we have against us because we want to do something, right? It's not merely abstract. We're talking about how do we think through what is out there that we can use beneficially, what's out there that works against us. If what we're trying to do is pull people together, we want to get people to work together to accomplish some specific objectives, which in this case are at least partly political, but which have implications for everything that we're concerned about as a community. So when you think about it that way, what do we have going for us, and what do we have against us? And you have so much information. Now draw it out.
For us, we do have the people, but our trouble is getting them together into a unit, a cohesive unit, you know. So we need cooperate, but the people are here, you know. China can come in with a sack on his back. The next thing you know, he owns everything.
Okay. What else do we have out there? Let's look at our community now.
Basically, we have inner strength among ourselves, but it takes like a disaster to bring it out.
Inner strength. Okay. Let's think through it now, because we, you know.
Now, I'm going to call what you're talking about crisis orientation. Okay, it takes that crisis to bring people together. Okay, that's very common in the sense that it takes a feeling that a whole lot is at stake before people are willing to go on the line, right? So one of the questions you have, for example, in understanding this redistricting process is the consequence for failing to make this fight and make it well. Because the effect of allowing white people to control this process, to allow the white folks to win big on this, will affect everything that you're concerned about, not just for the next 10 years. Because it has a cumulative effect over time, and you get further and further behind in the process. So this is a crisis in that sense, all right? I mean, I sort of took a side tour for the moment, but that's what we're talking about, is what's for us and what's against us if we want to get together around this fight. What have you got? And what are you up against?
Now, some of you I've heard tonight, talk about some things and mention some things that I don't see you putting up here on the board. See, in order for you to make a true assessment, you know, of what you got for you and what you got against you, you're going to have to put it all out there. You know, it's, say for example, if I'm ready to fight Mike, right? And I'm looking at what I got going against me. If I forget that Sam is my buddy, you know, I'm forgetting one of my, you know, major strengths. And if if I forget, you know, that Emma is over on the side with Mike, then I go in there forgetting that, hey, I'm in big trouble, because I was looking for Mike alone, and there him and Emma standing there.
Why don't you let your buddy fight my
So, so let's look at it, in depth, to make sure that we put them all out there. Like I said, some of you I know have talked about things tonight that I don't see you putting up here on either side.
Against us, let's add poor self-esteem.
Okay? Poor self-esteem. A lack of self-esteem.
I said, that is true.
Okay? What were you about to say?
I was thinking about some of us are lacking of knowledge. Let anybody put your way.
I believe that's covered.
That's covered.
Lack of understanding.
Okay.
Okay?
Poor response from our elected officials.
Poor response from elected officials.
Maybe I need to say poor communication from elected officials. I'm trying to be nice-hearted.
Okay?
For us, we've got the law on our side now.
For us, we got the law.
But for this one, in this case, we do. For this redistricting issue, we do. Yeah, for this case, I mean, for redistricting.
For redistricting, we got the law. Oh,
Oh, I know. Our weakness against is we're not organized.
all right.
Response from elected officials to the black community. Can you put that on there? Concern of the black, unconcern for the black community of elected officials.
Would that be support? Lack of support.
From public officials.
Okay. What else we got? For us or against us?
There's nothing more in here? Is it this lopsided?
Can I add one more?
We got more devils anyway.
I just feel kinship to this community.
Go ahead.
Okay. As in all communities, there's this whole thing of fear.
Speak for yourself.
Both real and perceived.
Fear. All right, fear.
Fear from who?
Well, fear of working together because of crime and drugs, for instance. Fear of reaction from the white community, for instance. Fear of being ostracized from even members of our own community. That's my thing. Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's fear or ignorance.
What were you about to say?
You've been talking about the parent now, right?
Sit down, Em. Sit back in your seat. Let her tell us about that.
I can't say what I want to say, but it's when when the white folks buy it, okay, if he running and she's running, and when the white person buy the votes and they go that way and go for him, not me. I don't like to say that.
Vote buying.
But you understand what I'm saying. You understand what I
Exactly what you're talking about.
Support. Lack of support.
Lack of support. What was you about to say?
Oh, Junior,
Yeah.
lack support from the parents in school.
Lack of support from the parent.
Lack of support by the parents?
In school.
Hollis, my son was standing close to the voting machine. It wasn't right close to it, but where I could hear them. He could hear these because that's who you want for? Grill. But then another one came in. Who you want to vote for? Who you want to vote for? No, that one. for Mr. Greer, and then one of them came out and told my son, well, I did what I could for 10.
Well, you're doing real well in describing this list against you. How about this? You got nothing going for you.
Yes, those that strengths that's up there, those are some heavy strengths that we have.
But are they all?
Population, and the law. Those are the main things we got. Those are the most heavy. Those are some heavy strengths.
But,
Is this it?
but are they all?
Are they all?
Yeah. Now, you got the majority of the population, but you have poor participation, lack of understanding, lack of interest, lack of education, lack of participation, lack of cohesiveness, lack of self-esteem, lack of support, fear, lack of support, lack of support. So what does it mean to have
Strength.
majority population? What?
Schools? You said the schools is a strength.
And God, that's all I can say.
God?
Last one.
Out from the church. I just said you could dash church.
I'm with you 100%.
When all else fails.
When all else fails, the Lord is with us.
What else do we have out there?
With our spiritual strength.
How many here have ever been involved in an election campaign?
Oh, Lord.
How many here? Let's see your hands. A single campaign. Any single political campaign, election campaign. What? So how many of you worked in an election campaign? Raise your hand. How many, put your hands down. How many of you have been involved in more than one campaign? How many of you have been involved in more than 2 campaigns? How many of you have been involved in more than 3 campaigns? 4 campaigns. And what do you call that?
Politics?
No, but what do you call that?
Determination.
Okay, let's call it determination.
So we got a little determination. So we,
Wait a minute, what else do you call it? When you have done something many times, what do you...
Consistent.
What?
Consistent.
Well, it may or not be consistent at this point, we'll come to that, but what do you call that accumulation of work in one kind of thing? What term do you use to summarize it? Experience?
Perseverance.
Perseverance, that's
Perseverance.
determination. But experience, right?
experience.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What you said but not for all of us.
But you have experience.
Oh, yes. Some of
Now, you
us.
may also have, are you suggesting consistency is one of the things that we ought to put up here?
From time and time again.
Well,
That's what he said.
to a percentage, I would say. Some of us not.
That's true. We should be.
We consistent in losing. We consistent in losing. Oh, they're
We
four,
don't
five,
give
they
up.
never two.
We don't give
No,
up.
we
Now,
definitely
that's-
don't.
that's-
We
that's-
See,
fight
that's
good.
determination.
That's a good
That's
one.
We got
determination.
determination.
We keep on trying.
That should be number 1. We're determined.
Hard workers.
For a few of us, at least.
Now, what was Hollis talking about earlier this evening? What was he saying about the black community's ability to experience what it has experienced as long as it has and been able to do as well as it's done? Survival, and what else? Well, that wasn't exactly what he was saying. What was the concept that he was getting at? That the black community has always done in the face of what it has always been made to endure. What? Well, we had that in determination. But there was another concept he was working on. Creativity. And I would say endurance as well. Right?
against us. How about putting jealousy on that against us?
You didn't want to get us too much on a roll over here, right?
Say, bring it back to reality. Say, let's.
That might should be up
So
at
we
the
about
top.
to catch up.
That might should be at the top. That might be the reason we like we are.
On the same line.
Jealousy.
Pardon?
Selfishness go on the same line with jealousy.
Jealousy and selfish.
Well, keep in mind something, too, to be fair. You know, in the white community, when someone makes a lot of money at the expense of others, they call that business acumen, right? And when that same way of working is in a situation where there are little resources and no great success, it's easier to see that attitude as jealousy and selfishness, right? I mean, it really depends on what spin or what perspective you put on it, right?
I don't mean that way. I mean jealousy that I want you to get ahead of me or to do anything that's going to give you any recognition or any.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
like the ballot
But what
prayer.
I'm suggesting, as we've gone through these workshops, this one comes up every time. And you hear that in lots of discussions, and I'm just trying to come back the other way and suggest there's an extraordinary amount of this in the white community as well. I mean, it's not...
Right, but it don't hinder them from progressing.
Well,
It hinders
because
black
this...
folk.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to get at.
All right.
Put that on the table.
Okay.
What is the difference is that they're starting out with power, right? Economic and political power and control in a situation, so that it has a different consequence in the way in which that attitude works. And you need to overcome it because you're fighting to get that power, right? But I just wanted to suggest that's there. That's there in all communities. And it's a problem about how to overcome it, how to deal with that.
Well, now, on white Chelsea, they will, if they see they are going to be destroyed by a black, they will, one candidate will pull out and let you go one-on-one, and blacks won't do it. Sometimes, there was a case here in Rolling from a few years ago where they tell me that one black was hired to run so he could, so to split the black vote. Yeah.
So that's what the power needs to be against.
Now, does this describe all the organizations in your community?
Well, we are assuming that the only organization we got in the community that we can use as one of our strengths is the church.
That's it?
That's the only organization in the
No
county.
other organizations?
I wouldn't say organization, but I would say strong parent. That would be
Strong
That
parents?
would be
But the churches are just about the only thing. You can get donations consistently from the church. Go back, but you go to anything else. What he coming on? No, I ain't getting him nothing there. But you go to church, it's consistent. You get that contribution. And they'll do it in the church, but nothing else.
I think it all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
What were you about to?
I would think out of all what's said and done, everything starts at home. It should.
Okay.
The church and the schools and all those organizations, but it should be a good home.
Are there any community organizations in Sharkey?
In AACP?
Oh, well, we should just about, yeah, we can't inactive right now. Because they are.
Don't support you like this.
Okay.
Well, it's national. They go to the national. They go to
Well,
We got SICIA. It's been here.
SICIA.
Yeah, it's been here 20 years. Yeah, we got the PTO.
PTO.
And the well, they got the PTA down here.
PTA,
We got the
PTO.
PTO up there because
Okay.
the PTO don't do what the PTA does.
Okay.
We
But-
radical.
But we got both of them.
There
They had to provide, they had to abide by the state. The PTO abide by rules and regulations.
PTA goes along, cooperate with the school board, and the PTO works for the best interest of the school, where the school board is.
Okay.
That's what I
All right.
Why don't y'all say that the PTA? I said, no, if we were PTA, we'd still be enrolling.
Right.
No,
We're PTO, right, that's parent teachers organization.
Yeah, PTO, and we're independent, and,
One.
and when they found out that the PTO was not, that somebody raised hell all the time, then they cooperate, they're nice now. We bought the sound system up there and so many other things, fans, and then we bought that PTO bought all that. Then when the school system found out that PTO was for the betterment of the school, they all right now, they're fine now, we don't have a problem. But at first, they thought we were gonna be somebody betray or something, contradictory or something. When they found out that we were at better school.
And it is a national move on to try to get rid of PTOs too.
Right, I understand that. One of the things that I want to say right here, because we can go on, which shows you the importance of systematically doing things and putting your plan of action down where you can see it, where that you know specifically what you're having to deal with. And the other thing, which is very obvious, is that we can very easily become overwhelmed with the problems we have and the things that we have to go up against that in most cases become so overwhelming until many of us will sit down because we become overwhelmed and deep within ourselves as well, it's no way. And that's why it's so important that we itemize and list all of our arsenal, all of the things that we have to work with, things that we got going for us, where that we can look at them. Because in order for us to be successful, what we have to do is to take the things that we have for us, the things that we have going for us. We take our strength and overcome the weakness. And unless we're able to put it there and take it one by one, then we won't be successful. But that's the task that we're up against. And I think if we look at those same steps that we talked about in organizing and apply those same steps with this here, with the determination that we have, with the creativity that we got, with those of us that are so consistent and work so hard, I think we can begin to look at placing some of that one by one on these and come up with various strategies and programs that we could gradually knock them off. We say we got the churches that are going for us, right? We say we got the PTO and the PTA that's going for us. Now, if we've got the churches and the PTO and the PTAs that's going for us, then there should be some means by which we could begin to deal with this lack of education. Because through those two or through those three different agencies, we should begin to have massive contact with our folks.
Could you put on that the division? Well, I reckon that would be against it. Division between the churches. If we had all the churches was a cohesive unit, we'd have no telling how much strength.
Okay, so
Everyone is a
There's a lack of unity.
lack of unity. Okay.
so what we have to begin to do then maybe is to use those churches that we got going with us as we educate the people in those churches based on the knowledge and information that we have come up with through our research. They become better informed, and we can use one church to help turn around and persuade the members and the pastors from other churches. It's one thing that so often we do in our organizing efforts, and that is that we stay isolated. We don't communicate to the extent that we should, and as a result of that, we stay isolated, and we sit on the truth too long, too often. When we look at the strategies and the tactics that the military use in this country, we see that they take 3 steps. They identify the enemy, they isolate the enemy, and they annihilate the enemy, they destroy it, see? And if we as a people, as an organization, as a community, allow ourselves to become isolated, then the next step is for us to be destroyed. See, if we've got some folks out there that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we need to tell the rest of the folks about it. You know, if we've got some preachers that ain't doing what they're supposed to be doing, we need to tell it and begin to tell. Say, I'm going to tell it everywhere I go. I'm going to tell it. And begin to tell it, and through that process, what we do, we educating folks, right? Because we've done our research, we've done the investigating, so we're educating and not allowing ourselves to become isolated. And once we understand that and begin to do that, we will see that the lack of education thing will eventually be able to be erased. And once people become more informed about the truth of what's involved in the situation, chances are their interest level is going to increase. So therefore, we're at the verge of erasing the lack of interest. But we have to look at it in these terms to be able to see very specific what we're talking about and what we are dealing with. And as the educational level increase and the interest level increase, then it's automatically given that we will begin to get more support. And if you're beginning to get more support, then the unity thing is beginning to build, right? Because we said one of the other things was a lack of unity. So if these things are happening, then the other is beginning to have impact on that. And ultimately, through the whole process and our being perceived